Okay, guys. I didn't think I'd really see the day, but I guess Vaush and Destiny are friends, or not friends again, but they had a conversation. They did a debate at the White House. Pretty cool. I guess they were invited in some capacity. I don't really know. Somebody can fill me in on that in the middle while we're watching this. But I'm curious, what is the conversation about? Well, it doesn't even matter. It's going to be a special event organized by Progressive Victory. I guess that's what it is. Seems pretty cool. Can't wait. I will say Destiny looks like he looks very dapper. He looks like a 14-year-old debate student on his way to the National Debate Committee, state nationals. I'm making things up. But he does look interesting in a suit, or in looking all dapper like that. Very interesting. But let's get this going.
All you want, but you can tweet all you want, but at the end of the day, lawmakers, rightfully so, only respond to what voters want. Their constituents are the people that actually go to the polls and vote for them. There's a reason why, criminal justice looks the way it does in the United States, and it's because the demographic of people voting are not the.
I think we're like in the middle of a. We're in the middle of a conversation, so I don't know. We're gonna have to get adjusted to what's going on.
The demographic of people that are most often impacted by the criminal justice system, and I think that when we say like voting is the least we can do, I mean young people don't do it. Like they don't vote. Like and if you're not willing to vote, like
true.
We are live as a package. Hello.
That was an intro. Oh, that makes sense. I thought we were starting in the middle.
We are in scenic. What city is this?
Washington D.C.
Oh.
Wow, Vaush is like over enthusiastic. It gives me those interesting vibes, those overly enthusiastic vibes. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like you're in an uncomfortable situation, so you feel the need to overcompensate by pretending to be overly comfortable with what's happening. So
that's true. Yeah. We just had a.
Do you know Emma? Her name is Emma Vigland. Is someone Destiny hates because he thinks her political opinions are completely wrong, and she's extremely smug about them. I saw her talk to Tim Pool. I liked what she had said, and then. I'm not super. Isn't she like a Sam Cedar girl? I don't really know too much about her.
Congressman Ro Khanna on talking about a number of things, but mostly I think how to get people engaged. Vote Dems, ideally.
It's the weirdest outfits I've these two interest. Okay.
I'm sure we all have somewhat aligned views on that, but to kick things off, I wanted to talk about something that at the very least I know you and I have worked on: Progressive Victory, the fine people who set all this up. They're a canvassing org that we've thrown people towards as streamers, and as a result of that, thousands of folks have gone on out and canvassed. It's given me a lot of hope for, I guess, live streaming or new media as a mechanism for political onboarding.
Sure.
I was just curious what.
Also, just to be clear though, a lot of this is like a political stunt manning. Just to be real, this is the debate sphere. Destiny and Vaush are in the debate sphere, and I like Destiny a lot, so I'm not sitting here like, oh, I hate what he does, blah blah. But a lot of this is not necessarily productive. I would argue that both of them, and I guess myself included, I mean, I react to the content, whatever, And to give Destiny credit, I feel I don't watch a lot of Vaush. I'm not a big fan of the guy. He does seem to also have conversations, especially more recently. It's become less debatey and more like, I'd say, productive. But I think a lot of the online debate sphere, for the most part, for the overwhelming majority of it, does seem to be very performative. Right? Like that's like the point. The point of it is to kind of like get people angry rather than necessarily to be productive about it. It's entertaining content through political debates. It's sensationalizing and making politics fun, which it's not supposed to be. I can't speak, but again, like I had said, I don't think I think that's changing. Des is probably one of the best people that does like debate stuff, but
everyone's thoughts were on that with regards to like the new path forward.
I just think it's something to keep in mind so you don't jerk yourself off too much.
You guys decide, I don't know what the young people are up to nowadays.
I feel like the
Vaping, yeah, I do know. I've seen that.
I do skibbity bop toilet and Among Us balls. I'm fucking hip, dude.
I feel like the two important things for people are, if you're in the online content space, the rhetoric about like Dems and Republicans being the same has to stop. It's absolutely patently ridiculous. If you look at voting records, if you look at state.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, listen, I'm going to be very clear. When it was like 2016, I think it was so much easier to see how people on the left and right were very similar. It was just something where it was like, hey, we're all kind of the same. We have similar interests. We just have different ways to go about them. I think very quickly we've realized that doesn't exist anymore. If you're a conservative, I understand it and I respect it. If you're a Trump supporter, you're fucking insane and you're coping. the current modern day Republican Party is fucking psychotic. It really is. They don't believe in science when it comes to vaccines. They don't believe in science when it comes to our environment. They don't believe in science when it comes to trans people. That's mental health science, but trans people are valid and they exist. And then they'll say, well, that's not logical. And then they'll pray to a sky daddy that watches you jerk off and drowns an entire world except for a boy and a girl of every animal. And then I guess we're all products of incest. You know, it's one of those things where it's fucking crazy. They look to Russia. They're like, they're very pro-Russia, weirdly enough, despite the fact that pro-Russia is antithetical to us. It's fucking crazy, man. It's fucking, it's almost concerning. We're not there. I'm not saying Democrats are amazing. I'm not saying, oh my God, Democrats are amazing. They have all of our best interests at heart. But, you know, if I have to choose between eating a log of shit and drinking a shot of piss, I'm drinking the piss every day of the week. I'm drinking it every day of the week, baby. I'm taking shots of it. You know, I'll take the give me the yellow stuff. Give me the hard stuff. You know, I'm just saying.
Stance on issues. Democrats and Republicans stand in stark opposition to one another, so I think it's important to make it seem like voting for Democrats are a worthwhile proposition, if for no other reason because of the composition of the Supreme Court. And then I think the second thing that's important is to make it seem like there is actual change that can happen if you engage with the system. And I feel like too many people are so quick to throw in the towel and say, like, you know, it doesn't matter who you vote for, it doesn't matter what happens, it's all politicians, it's all the same game at the end of the day.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with that. Vote, especially locally, man. Go vote locally. Get a little more involved in that. You're gonna have much more control over your local government than anything else. That's gonna have a much more profound impact.
Everybody has corporate buyers and lobbyists and blah, blah, blah. And I think at the end of the day, when you consume enough of that media, you feel like, why does it matter? Like, why engage at all? And that's really frustrating to say those two things. On a third thing, too, it's hard to encourage this as a streamer because we're so national or international with our outreach. Getting more engaged at the local level, it's so easy to get engaged and see real, tangible results from your actions than trying to engage at the national level where it's like, I threw $5 at AOC, and now I don't really know, what my impact is beyond that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, yeah, certainly. I think that it's very important to make sure that your political engagement does not end with just voting, right? Like, voting for Democrats is essentially, it's essential, right? You have to do that. You have to vote for Democrats in general elections. I do believe that.
Sure.
But at the same time, that is one of, like, the least, it's the least you can do with political engagement, right? Get involved locally, as you said, get involved with your local DSA, because if it's just about electoralism, you're going to feel a little bit alienated, right? Because you're not, Biden, for most young people, he doesn't represent them. Like, he doesn't necessarily connect with them, and that's why voting, I would imagine.
I don't know what you're talking about. Biden loves ice cream, and the young people, they love ice cream. What are you talking about?
Or I would advocate should be something that you do, but not necessarily where your political engagement ends.
I agree with that, but I would say that voting is the most important thing, and almost nothing else matters if you're not willing to vote. There's way too much like online activism. It happens in the streamer world, happens in the YouTube world.
Well, yeah, the whole point is to do your activism to get people to vote. If you're not voting, your activism doesn't mean piss worth of shit.
It happens on Twitter. You can tweet all you want, but at the end of the day, lawmakers, rightfully so, only respond to what voters want. Their constituents are the people that actually go to the polls and vote for them.
Yeah, sure.
There's a reason why, criminal justice looks the way it does in the United States, and it's because the demographic of people voting are not the demographic of people that are most often impacted by the criminal justice system. And I think that, when we say like voting is the least we can do, I mean, young people don't do it. Like they don't vote. Like if you're not willing to vote, like nobody's gonna, and they shouldn't listen to you, because at the end of the day, a politician's job is to get reelected. And if you're not going to go out and actually show up and vote for said politicians, why should they ever listen to anything you have to say?
Yeah, and the NLRB and the FTC right now are probably the best cases to make that point, that politics and elections actually matter. Because if you're somebody who says, well, actually, the only thing I care about is organizing Starbucks or organizing Amazon or supporting like the UAW, if you don't have a National Labor Relations Board that is supportive of labor rights, it's going to be a much tougher climb. And even when it comes to antitrust and monopoly, that touches everything. Like the inability of people to make any significant revenue on podcasts is all about antitrust. The inability of people to kind of speak freely is related to, the power of Silicon Valley that is now being contested by Joe Biden's FTC. Because
I just got to say, I hear this term Silicon Valley all the time, and everybody's like, oh man, these super smart media tech nerds. And all I remember is I used to look at Silicon Valleys in my dad's Playboys all the time. And that's the kind of Silicon Valley I'm used to. I'm just kidding. My father left my pregnant mother. That's not a real story. Sad.
he won and because he appointed people like Lena Khan. I think people like trash vote blue no matter who all the time, but there's actually, if you're on the progressive wing of the party, I've often seen that kind of used in reverse, in that, let's say you get John Fetterman across the finish line
Zed
in
King
Pennsylvania.
super chatted $5. Hillary Clinton was right.
Yeah.
We need to Pokemon go to the polls.
I agree. I don't know what else to say.
Like he won a primary against a right-wing Democrat. Because vote blue no matter who exists, all of the kind of conservative Democrats in the state were like, all right, I'm voting for John Fetterman.
Yeah.
And actually, AOC gets knocked a lot for that mama bear comment that she made about Pelosi.
Well, it was true.
She said that at the time where it looked like Bernie was going to seize the nomination. What she was trying to do is say, like, look, Bernie's going to be the nominee. Right. Pelosi is supportive of whoever the nominee is. Everyone else then needs.
I'm not a nerd, so I don't know exactly what they're talking about right now. Just saying.
To get behind Bernie, and you kind of use that vote blue no matter who momentum to say, look, you don't have a choice. He's the blue.
And
so guess what? Vote for him. You're a socialist now.
100%. And by the true party, it's meant to say that, like, Nancy Pelosi, for all of her faults, she always had an ability to reach a bunch of different people in the caucus, right? And she developed those kinds of relationships, including with AOC.
She could reach my cock ass.
I thought what you were going to say was that
she's
some of
not
the left online criticized.
She's not that bad looking. I know she's a little old, but I like fine leather. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, I do enjoy myself some nice, comfortable, fine leather. Some beautiful stuff. Can't really complain.
The fact that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was using her excess fundraising money to help other Democrats in more vulnerable positions. And I found that criticism to be quite silly because that's an exercise in leverage, right? And she's using her political capital to get something done behind the scenes. And just because we don't see it in public, you're going to hear about that maybe in a year or so. Or you may never hear about some of the gains that she gets. But that's kind of the stuff that we don't see that happens when you actually have people who are sane in the positions of power. And Lena Khan, I mean, what is this? The best FTC chair that we've seen in decades?
Yeah.
I mean, what, since the 60s or whatever? Same in terms of Biden's posture towards labor.
The only thing that bothers me about this video so far is where is the food? I mean, I've never sat at a table before with food not there. And you might sit here and be like, well, maybe that's why you're fat. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you saying those things are the reason why nobody loves you, because you just can't keep your fucking mouth shut. I don't need you to decide. You can't to stop lecturing me. You know what I mean? Jesus Christ.
So it's not about voting for the person like they're a celebrity. We're not electing class president.
Right. It doesn't mean you endorse the drug war because you voted for Joe Biden.
This isn't The Bachelor, where you're not picking somebody to marry. You're picking somebody who's a figurehead.
I mean, on The Bachelor, you're not really picking somebody to marry. You're picking somebody to divorce. Let's be real.
And all of the people that come along with that person, the people that are, heading those agencies, that's what you have to keep in mind. So it's this whole, it's broadening elections outside of celebrity to coalitions.
Yeah, and if you really don't like Manchin and Sinema, if you don't like these Democrats who sit right on the edge, the easiest way to take power from them isn't to primary them. It's to just have more Democrats in office. If there are 55, 57, 60 blue senators, Manchin and Sinema don't matter as much anymore because we don't need to appeal to them, to that like very center-leaning, center-right-leaning political or economic agenda in order to get what we want through the Senate.
Although in some cases you can primary. If the Democrat is likely to win the general election, like in Arizona, then you can primary Sinema and Ruben Gallego.
Maybe Sinema.
In Arizona, maybe, yeah, but in West Virginia,
forget about it.
Well, primaries have value.
Arizona's kind of wacky, though, but yeah.
The more democracy that exists, I think, is the better. And primaries have value in terms of also pushing incumbents where they don't feel too cozy. They don't feel like they can rest on their laurels and not represent people anymore.
I think, we're talking about electoralism, which is of course vital, but I think that at the fundamental, like, personal level, so often it's about convincing a person that what they can do can make a difference, like on any level. I saw the most incredible statistic the other day. Apparently something like 60% of the book bans in this country, like school boards banning this because they mentioned gay people in it or something, like all that. There's been thousands of them, right? 60% of them from 11 people. Just very dedicated folks calling around. They're not in the district,
Is that real? 60% of book burnings happen from like a very small amount of people? I mean, I feel like this is not real. Just 11 people are responsible for 60% of the book bans. I would imagine that there's some kind of establishment that would be in charge of the book bans. Maybe it's an elected establishment. Just 11 people responsible for 60% of book ban requests. Okay, across the U.S. Okay, requests, not actual bans. A handful of people behind the majority of challenges seeks to... Let's see, Washington Post, the challenges field nationwide found that 11 adults were responsible for 60%. Okay. During 2021-22. With some of them contesting close to 100 books in this school district alone. That they documented. Okay. The reporting follows this year, noting that they had documented 1,269 demands to ban library books and resource in 2022, the highest number of attempted banned books. Okay. Interesting. Well, this is 2021 to 2022 school year, so I wonder if the 20... Okay, this is just confusing. One of those, the majority of the books were written or about LGBTQ people. Okay. It doesn't say they didn't pass through all the book bans that were requested, just to be clear. But it's an interesting statistic nonetheless. How many people... Okay, whatever. We don't need to go that much into it.
They are just calling around, making a fuss, traveling. It is remarkable, especially at a local level, how much single people can do.
I've heard stories of like housing.
Well, it's fundamentally... It's remarkable how much you can get if you're a complaining bitch. If you are willing to complain about something, you will... like, the reality is we live in a world that talks about how you shouldn't complain because it's bad and blah, 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 blah. But the reality is if you're an asshole and you complain, you're probably getting what you want. We all sit here and criticize Karens on the internet. We record the, oh, look at this Karen. We make fun of them. But the reality is 99.99% of the Karens bitching and moaning and complaining, they're not getting recorded and they're getting what they want. They're going to restaurants. They're complaining. They're getting a free dessert or a half off dessert. They're getting a free drink. They're getting a free this. They're getting a free back. They're getting a return on a particular product that they don't have a receipt for or something. People who at your job, the people who bitch, moan, and complain, the least hardworking people that cry the most, they're getting promotions. I don't know what to tell you. There was a dude that I work with. All he would do is complain, and he was a fucking dog shit worker. And since he was so shitty, they decided to put him into a different position that happened to pay like $10 more an hour. It's just the way the world works. I'm not saying go and complain, but I'm saying that if you complain, you're probably getting what you want. Because especially at a business that doesn't want to deal with your complaints, because they know that, for every one person who complains, that's like that has a much higher reach than every one person that has a positive affirmation. My mother worked in the fast food industry. She did very well. And she told me, she's like, for every one person that complains, that's like 11 people who are hearing about it. For every one person that gives you positive affirmation, that's like 5 other people hearing about it. So those complainers have much more of an impact than the non-complainers.
Developments held up because one old lady goes to every single city council meeting. She knows every single person on the board. She's always giving speeches. There's a joke I tell on my stream. There was a stoplight outside my house I hated, and they were finally marking the stoplight for deletion. And I remember one day this lady knocked on my door and she had a little petition to sign to save the stoplight. And I'm like, heck no, this stoplight is the dumbest stoplight in the world. I'm so glad to change the stop signs. I have a son. I walk him to school. It's not a dangerous intersection. And I kind of laughed it off and she walked away or whatever. And 2 weeks later, God damn it, she saved the goddamn stoplight. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I should have been running a counter petition. But there is an ungodly.
I mean, you could have just went like this and blew her and she would have fell. Not blow her like that, of course. But old people are very fragile. All she needed to do was slip. But you don't want it to happen on your property because then it goes through your homeowner's insurance and it's a whole mess.
The amount of power available, but it's at the local level. And that's not sexy. Everybody wants to talk about Biden and Ukraine and AOC and that's it. And then it's like, well, who's your mayor? What do you do locally? Because that's where just 5 or 10 people can sometimes exert massive influence on some of your policies. But it's just not, it's not talked about on Twitter as much, so nobody goes for it as much.
You go to almost any city, and the downtown area is almost completely controlled civically by city councilors who are in the suburbs. So to them, it's just a shopping destination. But for 100,000 people, it's home. And there's this disconnect. And it's almost always because the people in the suburbs are old and retired and have the time to run and the money to run, and they show up.
Yeah, and true. It is true. It's fair. I know my mother, for instance, she doesn't run on anything or any crap like that. But she's always got projects she's trying to do around the house. And it's like, and then I'll ask her to do something for me. And the other day I had a fanny pack I wanted her to sew up. Very high quality fanny pack. Don't judge me. And she's like, yeah, I'll try to get to it soon. But I'm really busy. And I say, fucking, what do you mean you're busy? You have nothing to do. You're bored all the time. You're always fucking coming up with projects. She gave me a little bit of a look, and then by the next day she had finished it. She finished doing what I had asked her. But the funny part is I didn't even need it done. I didn't even care. I don't need it for 3 more months. I was just busting her chops. But the point is that all people have way too much fucking time on their hands, especially retired
But
ones.
there's nothing about that isn't transferable to a young, just out of college, sort of entrepreneurial, engaged activist. It can be done. But a lot of people, especially on the left, it's not that they set their hopes too high. Hopes should be high. But the expectations of what any individual can do, I think a lot of people are touting around, historical revolutionary dreams. When in reality, the real way you get power in this country and in any situation is by knowing
Punching
who your local
people.
councilors are and
Yeah,
calling
that's
them
what I mean.
often enough to be annoying. That showing up is 90% of political power. And a lot of people don't want to do that because it's not sexy. And I think that making that sexy, or at least
Oh, I guess he means like streamers or something. Yeah, sure.
convincing people it's worthwhile. I mean,
I
that's
find it interesting, not to bring Hassan into this. I know we're talking about Hassan too much, but I find it interesting that, he doesn't seem to show up anywhere except for the writer's strike, where he was able to make content out of it. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems like the only time he'll do advocation is if it seems, well, I guess like Vaush said, sexy, to be honest with you. So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit I wanted to mention.
really big part of it.
I also wish for a lot of far left, because I've probably fought with all of you at some point over far left activism online. I wish that instead
I'm sorry.
instead of you might not know me, but okay.
I guess this is going to be the new online lefty council. I mean, Destiny's moving out of his manosphere arc. I wonder if he's going to move back into like a Vaush arc.
Instead of pushing, sure.
He owned you so hard you forgot.
Absolutely, yeah. Lots of Twitter.
No,
clips.
I know you debated
Wow.
Sam.
And
But
maybe during the political season there'll be more conversations to be had too. Maybe I'll pop in, because here's my thing. Right, I know we always thought. I know I'm going to be shameless UBI plug, but this is a really. I agree with it that there's not a single actual thing being pushed by Republicans. Like there's no meaningful reform pushed by Republicans. It's all emphatic dog shit. But I think a conservative solution that they're not pushing is UBI. I mean, it is a welfare program, but outside of that, it is conservative. It gives people the agency and autonomy to do what they want to do with their money. It would be a way to phase out our current very highly conditional welfare program that I think can have some negatives to it. I would say it's like somewhat libertarian in its usage. And we're not talking about it, and that's something I would probably want to talk about a lot more. That negative income tax, it's also a type of UBI, but you get my point. And I think that should be talked about more than anything else. So
I don't really know anything else.
Sure, it's possible.
I don't remember any
sorry.
fight.
Okay, that's all good. You drank a lot, I guess. No. Instead of or.
What was that? Super Mario just laughed there.
I wish it could just be and. Instead of looking at, the mainstream Dems won, it's either them or my progressives, and since they won, now I'm checked out of the process. Like, how many people were disillusioned after Bernie lost, and it's like, super delegates suck, and the system sucks, and you disengage. I wish there was more of it's good to vote blue and to get Dems in, and we need to build on this and move it further left that, say, somebody like me would want. But moving while still supporting the establishment, rather than being if the establishment is winning, I don't want anything to do with it, I'm going to unplug completely until I get, my ideal socialist revolution or progressive revolution or whatever. I think that disconnect is just so cancerous for young people. I don't want to make Feinstein jokes here, but if young people voted, the composition of Congress would be way different, right? It would be way, way, way different if the electorate was more evenly composed of all the age groups, rather than skewing so heavily towards only older people. That's going to be more, like you said, live in the suburbs and are more plugged in. And yeah.
What I'd say to that is that those young people that you're talking about who got disaffected by the results of the 2016 primary, they're not an organized bloc. They're not really a thing. They're a lot of people who have ideas about things. The party establishment is an organized thing.
Well, yeah, that is true, but I would argue that the streamers would be the people that could organize. And listen, from what my understanding of Vaush is, he seems to not be the guy super advocating to go vote. Maybe that's just a new thing that he's doing now. You know what I mean? Everybody grows. But I think that's just the direction people need to head is hey, go vote. And I think it's a very positive thing. So.
And so, in that sense, between those two groups, the party establishment has a lot more agency. They can organize together, they can meet, and they can decide how they're going to interact with their, at that point, junior coalition partner member. They decided through 2016 that they were going to treat them like crap, and they then paid a price for it. So you can say that people should be bigger than that and not worry about how they're treated. Mm-hmm. And okay, fine, that's legit. But at the same time, if you have something within your control, you got to do better than that. And and I think the party establishment has learned, the way that the party establishment, Schumer in particular, even Hakeem Jeffries since he became House leader, has not been going to war against the kind of grassroots base on the left in the way that he used to. He even has told AIPAC to back off of going after the squad. Part of that is the squad being much more team players than they started out as. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't explain Schumer. Schumer too has just been close friends with Bernie, and so.
I don't think he's ever been anti-voting. I don't think I said that he was anti-voting. More of I don't know if he necessarily advocated for voting or was a big pusher of hey, you guys should go vote. But I could just be wrong. I'm just not a big fan of the guy. But hey, you know what? Things change. So who knows what will happen in the future.
It doesn't create the opportunity for people to be furious in the establishment.
I think a lot of people everybody saw a pretty big blow up during like 2020 when everybody was home and there was a lot of social views to go on. And I think that people in general have been fucking crazy. I think in my opinion, this year has been the calmest year in a positive sense, where people are kind of collecting themselves and maybe some of the TOBs, the eternally online behavior syndrome. Some of the TOBs are going away a little bit, and people are getting their shit back together. So,
speaking of Schumer, this is a bit of a left turn, but what is your assessment, Ryan? You know, as a reporter, you can put on your hat a little bit here, reporter cap, about Schumer's reticence to get Menendez to resign. Like, do you think that we're talking about a massive 2024 election where it's likely Biden versus Trump, and a lot of the thrust of what Democrats will argue, is that Trump is corrupt, he can't be trusted. It undercuts it a little bit if Menendez is hanging by a thread in the Senate. Why hasn't Schumer called him to resign?
I think he thinks that this will work itself out eventually.
Yeah.
At his press conference on Tuesday, he said Menendez is going to be here speaking to the caucus Wednesday. We'll see how that goes, and then I'll talk about it afterwards. Didn't go great, but he's
he used to blame autism for his lack of social advocation. Super based, I guess. But he talks to people all the time. I feel like that's not a good excuse, but whatever.
Just trying to put it off. He hopes that it will, I think, resolve itself. The fact that they're all in the tri-state delegation and have 40 years of experience together, God knows what kind of relationship they've had over the years.
Yeah.
There's also the personal, they've obviously just known each other for that
between Feinstein and Menendez.
Yes.
It's
that puts them down to 49-49.
It's looking a little dicey over there.
I mean, honestly, Senate congeniality is a frickin' disease. Like, the idea that these massive decisions are being made based on personal relationships in this way. Like, say what you want about the House, but at least there's a more semblance of direct democracy there and a bit more accountability. Because it's incredibly frustrating, I think, for people like talking about alienating voters, how recalcitrant the Senate is enormously, I think, demotivating.
Those with the current, the possible government shutdown. I'm not super educated on what exactly is going on, but I very highly doubt. Like, I think it was in the last couple of years that they shut down for like maybe a month or two, or that was during the Trump administration. It's probably not going to happen in any meaningful way. We already know that, like, we literally just cannot shut down. So I doubt that anything's going to happen with that. But then this will be the time I'm wrong, and then everything goes to fucking shit. But I doubt it.
Mobilizing, especially when you can't get anything past the filibuster unless it's some sort of budgetary measure.
I think that's part of why people talk about like the effectiveness of a lawmaker, because to some extent politics it's a game that you play. It's a skill that you exercise. It's not just a matter of like, well, I'm going in today to vote for exactly what my constituents want, because if you play it in that way, other senators that are working kind of more on these interpersonal relationships are probably going to have an edge in terms of different types of legislation or different types of deals that they're making on the floor. I understand the frustration, but I think that's probably just like an inevitable part of any republic, of anything. We've got like representatives going in and voting, even on like local levels. Like, those interpersonal relationships are really important for. In some ways, it's negative because it feels like you said it's alienating. Like, well, why isn't he representing me? He's friends with this guy.
Super chatted $5. Use this for your plane ticket for the next progressive meeting.
True, I will. I don't know, man. I feel like if I ever did some kind of an event, I don't know if I'd be into like a super political event. I think that I would want to do something, not to be like weird and almost clingy, but that's more related to, like, if I was going to take time to advocate for something, like do a debate or do something, it would be just that was something that was positively building, probably for my channel with my wife, the Rob and Dan channel. That's not even like a plug. I mean, the link is in the description, but it's more of, I think that's the direction that I would like to head into. That's more of a positive thing for me. I think I just enjoy, I enjoy being my wife's husband, and I'm going to enjoy being the father to my kids, and that's kind of where I'm headed. I kind of feel like that's where I want to go. And, so if I was going to do anything, it would probably be for something that pushes that more, I'll probably always sit in that realm more than anything else. Like, I like to engage in like into the political conversations and stuff, but I don't know if that's something that I would lead with, engaging with the manosphere for as long as I have, it makes me feel like I'm comfortable talking about that as my primary, motive. Not the manosphere necessarily, but like being what it means to me to be a man and a husband and a father, and, when we get to that point. Soon, I think that's more the thing that I enjoy the most. So
40 years, I guess screw me, right? But then in another way, ideally in an ideal world, there are people that are able to cut deals or push people a little bit more because of those relationships they have. So, but
though towards like authenticity, it is worth noting, of course, that there are, just the other day, at the same time that Democratic senators were increasing in number with calls for Menendez to resign, House Republicans on the Impeachment Inquiry Committee were publicly saying that they would not support following through on any criminal condemnations of Donald Trump following guilty verdicts in the indictment. So while in the House the Republicans are just we don't believe in the rule of law. At least there's something here. I mean, Menendez, it's like a cartoon character, right? He's got gold bars stuffed in the lining of his coat. It's spilling out of his pockets as he runs out. So it's an easy target, even any condemnation.
You must be strong as fuck, dude, having a bunch of gold bars in your pockets. Those things, I think gold is heavy. How heavy is a pound of gold? Wait a minute. That's not what I wanted to look up. How heavy is a gold bar? 27 pounds. Holy shit. That's fucking wild, brother.
Puts us ahead of the Republicans, but obviously, it should be a clear shot. Though, again, with the Senate being so weak, or our hold on the Senate being so weak at the moment, I guess I can understand some degree of recalcitrance. It's just
well, it's
not...
but Jersey has a Democratic governor.
Oh no, it would,
and so does California. Most of this is just them being these them thinking that. I mean, I joke about how the Supreme Court thinks they're the high priests of the United States. I mean, the Senate feels like they act as if they're some sort of member of
the Supreme Chamber,
the clergy or something like
the
that.
upper part of the Congress, right?
Yeah. Well, guys, hide your kids because they're not safe. It
should go the way of the House of Lords in the UK and just basically be ornamental.
Do you guys viewers know that he was already indicted?
Yes.
In 20, yeah.
He made history. He's the first senator
in
in
the
the
history
of the United States to be charged with, while in office, with two separate criminal events. And in the history of the U.S., going back to the 1800s, that really is a record-breaking performance. I mean, honestly.
Respect it, honestly. It's so straightforward. It's cartoonish, There's no subtlety. It's just a clear layup. Often a technicality, gold bars, whatever. It's no surprise young people have trouble feeling like there's any kind of meaningful inroad to political engagement here when it does feel like, you know who you know, and that's politics. It's not entirely true, right? I mean, Bernie did a lot running, as a Democrat from independent. But it should...
Well, because I understand that, and I think they already kind of touched on this, but I do want to throw it in there. I think it's so fucking normal. I know that's not a good or bad, it may not necessarily be good, but it's so normal, though, to create interpersonal relationships and then to work more with the people that you create those interpersonal relationships with. That's such a normal thing. If you work with somebody and you guys click, you guys are more friendly, you guys hang out, maybe even hang out outside, you're going to do better work with that person, generally speaking, than somebody you don't click with. There's a positive experience with somebody when you're friends with them in some capacity. And that's why that happens in the Senate. I know that we probably want to attribute it to this deep-seated conspiracy almost sometimes, or in the realm of that. But I think for the most part, it's just human beings create interpersonal relationships. They have more empathy and they're willing to do more for people that they like. They're willing to fuck people over less if they like you. And that's kind of part of the game, is to be a personality, be somebody that, engages in that capacity.
It's just so hard. I see all the Twitter engagement, right? All the lefties, both parties are the same, like you said, that rhetoric. People are very, very, very quick to distrust. You mentioned the AOC, the money going around to help other weaker candidates. They see that as a sign of corruption somehow. Any connection, any tie, any engagement with people who aren't completely pure. Hell, Bernie endorsing Biden. That was seen as a sign of weakness. Now, I understand oppositional politics to it.
Yeah, it seems like people are like, oh, it's just part of the game. Look at him. But it's it is part of the game, but it's not really that much of a game. It's like, oh, I lost, but this person has more of my interests. I obviously align with Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton more than I'm going to align with fucking Donald Trump, so I'm going to advocate for that person if I'm not going to be the one to make it.
Degree, but we have to work along a little, to some extent at least. I just don't know how to best sell people on that, that coalition mindset that you can actually do work from one side of it rather than just being the totality.
I think it's also important.
Yeah, I feel like some of the stuff I've watched from Vaush would be he wasn't necessarily for that, a couple of years ago. But you just, like a human being, this person has better interests for you. I think that there was a pretty anti-establishment perspective from Vaush for a while. That's from what I remember. And I guess I get it. Everybody gets beat up. They feel a little disenfranchised. So I guess that'll happen. But you just got to level with people and say sometimes the enemy of your enemy is your friend. You're not always going to hit a hole in one when you play golf. I don't know. That's not relatable at all. Especially since golf is kind of a dog shit sport. I don't even know really. I don't really get it personally, but you know, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Important to note that, like, while on social media, it feels like depending on the bubbles you inhabit, a lot of it looks like leftist infighting depending on the circles that you're in.
Sure.
The leftist infighting on the left is largely still, I think, like a figment of social media.
Sure.
But the infighting on the right, the Republican Party is legitimately threatening to tear itself apart under the weight of God knows what all the Donald Trump stuff is, the however many different charges he's facing, the fact that he's still so far ahead in the Republican nomination process, and the fact that there are still like a decent number of Republicans that won't support him. It only takes like 5 or 10% to effectively like destroy the Republican Party to pull away from him. Yeah, that whole process is going to be
Great
amazing.
time to be alive.
Yeah, maybe. Well, there's still like there's the
wacky.
hellscape future where Trump wins the election somehow.
It's over. You know, it's Jover even.
Yeah.
I lose joke at that.
I feel like the fact that so many people still support him is almost like on it's Jover territory. Like that's unbelievable.
It's like you can't. This is why Joe Biden's approval rating.
It is very interesting, man. I'm so surprised that so many people. I wonder why so many people still support Trump. You know, I wonder if some of them just feel like he's their best bet. But I feel like even the quote unquote normal Republican, I feel like my mother. She's a Republican, and I love my mother. I don't think she's a bad person. She's very reasonable. My mom's very trans affirming. You know, 'cause she's like, yeah, you know, people should just do what they want to be happy, and trans people just want to be happy. Like she's, you know what I mean? Like that's even her. I feel like she believes, part of her believes that that Trump should have won. You know, like that there is this, like it's just so. It's really, I think it's worked for a lot of people. I think it really has worked. Just the suggestion that there is, because we know that there's like general government corruption. And now you're able to just expand upon that and really convince people who I think are, my mom's a smart person, but you convince smart people dumb shit, convince them of dumb shit, you know?
Ratings are low, right? It's because you can be a Dem who will vote for him, but not approve him. Like, if you ask me, do I approve him? Oh, no, because he's not, I don't know, a communist or whatever. But I'll vote for him. I'll advocate for him. Whereas with Donald Trump, the line between, or the Venn diagram of supports and will vote for, it's one. There's one circle, you know? Yeah. Very little dissonance there.
There is like 10% or so of Trump supporters who will say, yes, I believe he's guilty and should be in prison.
Yeah.
And then we'll also vote for him.
Incredible brains.
Yes.
I mean,
you know?
many people are saying he's the Eugene Debs of the 21st century.
I have no idea
but
what that
I mean,
is.
honestly, like that does bring up something interesting here because
Super unrelatable. Emma, come on.
Biden's approval ratings are really low. But that's
I would
not
be
true.
like, yeah, he's like the Oscar the Grouch. Modern day Oscar the Grouch or one of the Fraggles. That would have been more relatable. He's like Invader Zim. I don't know.
Translating to Democrats, like at the polling, not what polling locations, but you know what I mean. In these,
special
like,
elections.
Special elections, right? And even in 2022, normally, like in 2010, when there was this big backlash to Obama, that was not seen in 2022. And I just think it's a really fascinating dynamic to unpack how Biden's presidency and his approval numbers appear to be a bit untethered from Democrats and the negative partisanship that they're able to engender when Trump comes up, right? Curious about any of your guys' thoughts on that front.
Abortion rights, I think.
Right.
Like if you don't have Roe overturned, then you're not seeing the overperformance in special elections that you have now. But what it did is it.
Do you think January 6th too?
A little.
Yeah.
Yes, like that helped congeal the already partisan stews.
You feel like Trump gave a lot of people permission to say things out loud. You know, that's an interesting idea. I wonder, yeah, maybe it makes people feel more confident saying the quiet part out loud, you know. That's possible, man. Sometimes people just need to feel enabled to be able to say some toxic ass shit. So
That was cooking at that time. But I think putting abortion rights on the ballot in a way that they hadn't been before, like Republicans had always said, like basically abortion rights are on the ballot. We're going to elect us. We're going to appoint judges that are going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and that drove out their voters. Democrats were they felt the whole issue was icky and wouldn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And also Democratic voters are so used to hearing Democrats like cry wolf about, George H.W. Bush was going to be like the one that ended democracy or something. So like saying like every 4 years saying that like Roe is going to be overturned fell flat, even though it was true under Trump in 2016. Now,
yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I never thought it was going to get overturned. I was like, it's ridiculous. There's no way you're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Like, we're never going to go back, you know. And look where we are now, dude. Look where we are now. I had to stop. I had to let go of all my mistresses because I was fucking. I couldn't risk it. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have enough riz. Also, my wife's fucking crazy, so she's already given me a lizard. I'm basically dating 8 women as it is. How many fucking personalities she rolls through.
Nobody can question whether or not it's on the ballot. In some states, it's quite literally on the ballot in terms of a ballot measure. In Virginia, in a couple weeks, Youngkin, if he gets a trifecta, he'll be under pressure to push abortion restrictions. basically any place at this point, the vote. Your vote has something to do with abortion rights, and so you're like, you know what? I don't care about anything else, but I do care about this, and that's enough to bump that number.
Really
up.
quick point, and then go ahead, Vaush. But that also really undercuts Trump needs more suburban women.
A lot of white people here. Just an observation. 4 white people sitting around an empty table with no food. Not even a centerpiece. Go make one at Michael's, and then some fat white guy watching them. Something's weird. Something's weird. Saying,
Come out for him if he wants to win in 2024, and this does not help him. Go ahead.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, it feels like for the longest time, corporate politics were always on the table, but for a lot of culture issues, it was always play fighting, right? You know, oh, they're going to revoke Roe v. Wade. Oh, they're going to overturn democracy. Oh, this, that. You know, and like maybe, but meh. And then in I guess, I don't know, 2016, 2017, whenever it became apparent, someone threw an actual punch. And it's like, oh,
you're really going to do this.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Also, a really unlucky confluence of stupid things. Of RBG not retiring when she should have. Of Merrick Garland, which we'll never get revenge for. Not that I'm a big fan of revenge politics, but that we actually lost a Supreme Court pick that was like doofully Barack Obama's. Like these things coming together. And then, Donald Trump getting so many Supreme Court justices was incredibly unlucky. And then,
Yeah, thank God he's a completely ineffective president, or he might have done real damage during his first term. I mean, maybe second term he does more. You know, I don't want to give him the chance. It's just... Yeah, I don't know. Young people get this, I think, because
I don't know why we don't do like. I mean, we shouldn't elect judges. I understand that, but I feel like every president should be able to nominate one judge, or not even every president, every term should get one judge, and then they should have. I guess what is there like? I think the number comes out like 28-year cycles for judges. That makes the most sense to me. I feel like that's not unrealistic to do, but I remember they fucking blocked Obama from getting his own pick, which is insane.
Young people now, they're growing up in a world where there was no play fighting. At least, somebody's like 18 now. For their whole cognizant life, it's been real. But for a lot of older people, that's one of those criticisms of the Dems, right?
It's been really real for millennials. God damn, I graduated high school in 2007. So we entered, a lot of us got into college, and then like right off the back of like the huge recession, which was crazy, and then now there's fucking COVID, and Jesus Christ, Yeah,
if you take a look at the median wealth distribution across generations, it's like right after Gen X, and Gen X doesn't have it great either, but after them, it's like falling off a cliff, Any millennial, Gen Z, now Gen Alpha, I mean, the only wealthy people from these generations are live streamers and crypto grifters, it seems. Outside of that, long-standing, successful family-building careers are few and far between, and I think that's really reflected in the hopelessness and ennui of the generations.
You forgot to add people that don't buy avocado toast.
Oh, obviously, right. Yeah. And people who stay with their folks till they're 30.
Is that going to change if these kids they're in their 30s now, start inheriting money because their parents?
I hope it does.
Great boomer die-off. We're finally waiting. It's finally almost around the corner.
What an interesting concept that we're going to see changes. I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like there's probably a good amount of people who are banking their retirement on their parents' why? What a terrible thing to think about. Jesus Christ. Maybe. You never know. I don't know.
For like 15 years, play fighting, the big boomer die-off, that's going to be like also like a huge demographic change.
What does that do to the structural politics?
I hope it doesn't.
Listen, I know this is... I don't even know if I want to say this. But listen. I know Dianne Feinstein, just right. She passed away. That's her name, right? She just passed away, right? Yeah, I was just making sure I got her name right. I know Dianne Feinstein just passed away, and that's really sad because anytime someone passes away, it's a sad thing. It's a terrible thing. You hate to see it. But then I'm also like, oof. It's an opportunity to get somebody a little younger. I don't mean to be rude, but I also don't know if it's necessarily the best thing for us to have 90-year-olds in government. What are you doing? You're probably already slipping a little bit mentally. And I can't imagine a 90-year-old is necessarily going to have the best interests of the younger generation going on. And then on top of that, even if they do feel like they have the best interests, they're not relating to anything. They don't even know how to use a smartphone. How are they going to understand the depths of what's going on in a social media generation, for good or for good or for bad? So it's like, hey, rest in peace, but also, it's one of those. It's an opportunity for somebody that's not 90. Maybe a 30-year-old can get elected. But go out and vote, guys, because you know who's voting 90-year-olds into fucking government? Other 90-year-olds. that don't. So go vote. I know it's hard, but do it.
You've seen that, like, they're not shifting rightward the way people, like, generations trend towards when they get older. And obviously, like, there's a systemic issue here, right? You know, you can fix it with one big cash grab for a generation, or some of them at least. But then the next generation's going to have the same issue. A lot of this ties back to housing. Nobody can afford houses right now. Nobody. Like, zero people can afford houses.
City planning is like this intractable problem that nobody seems to be able to get right. And I think even if you look at, like, California, you've got, like, what was that $1 billion train line to nowhere? Like, if even in some of these, like, left-leaning places, we can't figure out good city planning, good public transport, every place is becoming increasingly...
I think that's a big America problem. My understanding is that's not so much of an issue in Europe. They seem to be much better with their city planning. I wonder if it's just the way that they laid out their country. I really don't get. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why we suck so much. I feel like transportation should have been something that's been generally fixed by now, but it seems to be a disaster. Even I live in New York. The MTA is a fucking shit show. There's like scandals always going on with a bunch of people like pretending that they're working, but they're really staying home. I have friends in the MTA. And it's like, for what they tell me, like the way that they engage with it's almost like an abuse. These motherfuckers will clock in, they'll work 2 or 3 hours, and then they'll sleep on the train. It's just fucking wild, right? Like these are like some of the cleaners. It's crazy. It really is crazy.
Unaffordable.
Billions spent on high-speed rail, not even broken ground.
And
just
there's so much like
avoid.
There's a lot of conflicting pressure too on housing prices, where people are asking for basically contrary things without realizing it. Like housing is becoming increasingly unaffordable because there's so few houses available. People want student debt forgiveness so they can afford houses, which would just drive housing prices up if every student had an extra $20,000 to buy houses. Interest rates are finally going up, which are making houses unaffordable, but it's supposed to drive down demand. Like the housing market is just in a super huge mess right now, and we're trying to combat it with so many tools beyond just like what we really need is really just like the aggressive rezoning of housing districts.
Yeah, I feel like another aspect of it too is that all the housing that people want to engage in are obviously going to be around employment. Duh. Like, what is the obvious thing to say? But then that removes the ability to engage in conversations about housing in other areas. The United States is huge, and there's so much land in the United States that we could, build, everybody could live in 2 houses. But there's no economic infrastructure that surrounds a lot of the houses, right? And so then it's a conversation of like, well, you can't just go and build out in the middle of the fucking desert or something like that, or in the middle of a field, because obviously there needs to be the accessibility of work. And so how do you address that problem? And to me, you address that problem by figuring out a way to make it more accessible to live somewhere like that. And that means that you have to bring money to potentially new communities. And not to be that guy, but the UBI can potentially aid in that to some capacity. It can help build up new communities. You can go live wherever you want, and you're still bringing that $1,000 a month. It's not just simple as just having that, but it does bring the accessibility of new jobs and new robust, infrastructure into those communities, because you have more financial infrastructure, because people are getting money to be able to buy things with, and that pulls more jobs to potentially more remote areas, which could help expand more of the United States and create a healthier infrastructure. So.
Times had an article the other day that said that Tokyo has built more units in the last couple decades than exist in total in New York City.
Yeah,
and
not even surprising.
And as a result, people say, well, it doesn't have anything to do with the price. As a result, it's actually affordable to live in Tokyo.
Tokyo is the only city in the world that has managed to. Japan has a really aggressive housing policy.
But I feel like, don't they also have smaller houses as well? They're able to work with less. And we're fat as fuck, dude. I'm not trying to be that guy, but we are fucking chonkers. So I feel like part of the factor is how chunky we are. I'm fat. Like, listen, I don't know if I could probably live in a small apartment because I can engage in a level of claustrophobia, because, I'm not really afraid of Santa Claus because I look like him. But I do feel like there's a level of it there too. We're a little less space efficient. People want fucking lawns in America. Like, it drives me up a fucking wall. People, I want a lawn. I want a yard. Why? So I have to mow it? That doesn't sound fun. I have a yard. I don't want it. I don't want to have to go mow the goddamn lawn. I got to do it. I haven't done it in a couple weeks, but it's been growing a little slower. So, it's also been fucking raining. But I'm cool with like, hey, house next to house. I would just need a lot of sound insulation padding, because I will yell. Sometimes I lose when I'm playing video games, and it's good to have that buffer. You know, good
policy for Tokyo. Yeah.
So.
We need to repeal the Faircloth Amendment. I mean, that AOC kind of had I think a bill that came up in 2018.
What's that one do?
That's the one that bans basically all federal funding for public housing, and it's been in place since
Cool.
1998. Yep, that was a good Clinton special, right, for
Classic.
the neoliberal turn, and it's just still been.
She sort of repealed it or something? I remember it coming up.
Bernie and her were working together on it, and then I just think it died. I don't remember. I mean, it's difficult, obviously, to get
What is it
anything
that they do?
housing, and it's been up in 2018. We need to repeal the Faircloth Amendment. I mean, that AOC kind of had I think a bill that came up in 2018.
What's that one do?
That's the one that bans basically all federal funding for public housing, and it's been in place since
Cool.
1998. Yep, that was a good Clinton special, right, for
Classic.
the neoliberal turn, and it's just still been.
She sort of repealed it or something? I remember it coming up.
Bernie and her were working together on it, and then I just think it died. I don't remember. I mean, it's difficult, obviously, to get anything through the Senate, anything like that's not budgetary related.
I think it's really funny how this was framed as like a coastal elite problem, LA, New York, whatever, and then in 3 years, housing prices in Florida have gone up like 40%.
So it's called the Faircloth Amendment. Specifically, the amendment prohibits HUD from funding the construction or operation of new public housing with capital or operating funds if the units would exceed the number of. I don't know. Okay, it's complicated, but apparently it places a restriction on the ability to do more public housing.
Percent or whatever.
Alabama, I think, is up like 20% a year over year for like 4 years in a row.
Everywhere you move to, it was framed as like, oh, it's California, and it is to an extent, but it will be everywhere. Everywhere short of like Wyoming, and probably even there is going to have this issue. It's really just we somehow coordinate massive rezoning across the country at a local level, or some kind of federalized, subsidized housing. Preferably better than the ones we tried before. You know, those weren't great. Or, you know,
you could make federal money available to cities that fix their problem.
Better that than highways.
Yeah,
People
like,
are tearing
look,
down their highways.
You fix your zoning problem, you crush your NIMBYs, then you get free housing.
Yeah, I feel like,
and there's only enough for 10 cities. Everybody, go.
I feel like the issue that you run into, though, is this feels like a huge, like an external failure of democracy, and that all of your voters that are your strongest voting base in these cities are the ones that are most incentivized to vote against like new housing. Because like the people that are most harmed by lack of available housing in any particular city are future residents, are people that could move in and take advantage of lower prices that are now not able to. And then if you are,
and then if you're a resident in a particular area, you're probably going to want to hold down to this concept because then you want to sell your house for an egregious amount of money is probably part of it, or you don't want your property values to go down.
living in a suburb in California, goddamn, I live in Glendale, Culver City, Huntington Beach. There are so many of these places where you're in an apartment and like across the street from you are these like borderline dilapidated houses that sell for like $750,000 each. And it's like these people don't want to see high density, housing go up. These people don't want to see all these condos or all these new apartments go up because that's going to threaten their property value. So I feel like you run into a weird conflict of interest there.
It is interesting. I think it's so, I don't know, man. It's fucking crazy to me that the only thing in the entire world that really, for the most part, but the only thing that really increases in value is your house. Nothing else increases in value year over year, right? For the most part. I'm sure that there are some things. But, your car doesn't increase in value. None of these shit increases in value, but your house does because there's somewhat limited housing space, again, that's around jobs as well. And it's just like, damn, I understand wanting to be able to kind of cash out with a nest egg, but at the same time, I mean, you're using your house, there's wear and tear on it, and then you'll sell it, and then they have to fix it up anyway, and you're selling it for so much. It just doesn't make any sense. Imagine you buy it. I mean, it's just fucking wild. It's just crazy. I think that if you buy a house and then you sell it for less than it's worth, that's not a bad thing. You got a ton of usage out of it anyway. But, you live in a time where you buy a house and you could sell it for so much more years later. It's fucking wild.
Well, you're incentivized as somebody that is in that area to vote down and to be a NIMBY, like you actually are rewarded for it. I don't know what the
good news is.
Oh my God, I don't see how companies and landlords don't fuck with people over with a UBI. We already know companies use social services pay their employees less. Yeah, sure. Well, okay, to the point where they use social services to pay their employees less. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's especially for low-skill labor work. That's a great point. I think that you could probably deal with that reasonably in a more immediate sense. If we did a year-over-year adjustment for inflation, raise of minimum wage, that could fight that in a pretty reasonable way. There's obviously a conversation about advocating for like stronger unions and whatnot. when it comes to landlords, I feel like for the most part, when it comes to the prices of most things, we won't see a huge problem where there's reasonable competitors. You know, if you have like a fast food industry or a supermarket industry, especially in a financially robust area, there, you know, McDonald's isn't going to double the price of their hamburgers because then Burger King will just not do that. Same thing with grocery stores. When you're in less financially robust areas, you might see a little bit more abuse from that. But because there's a UBI going into these areas, it's going to incentivize more competition because more stores will be able to open up. So I don't think we'll see a big issue with most companies. You'll see an issue with companies or areas that are more of a monopoly-esque, and I would argue that landlords kind of are because it's a limited resource, especially, again, around that economic infrastructure. But then again, with more money being spread around more areas, you'll be able to kind of branch out and live into different places and afford to be able to live there and create new economies there. But if our biggest issue is, hey, landlords are going to take advantage of UBI, then we're going to have a conversation about rent increases and do like pretty aggressive rent control. The reality is to me, you're never going to implement anything that's ever going to be perfect. So, I feel like the issues that will arise regardless of what you implement, and that's what life is about, is implementing solutions that are overall better and then trying to deal with the potential negatives of those solutions, right? So I personally think it would work out reasonably well. We already have welfare programs that exist, so it's not like we don't have the ability or capacity to deal with welfare. We've been dealing with it for however long. So
we won't have any homeowners.
What's going on?
Yeah,
It'll just be two.
just
like,
renters.
Well, I mean, or you could
Vanguard
go.
and BlackRock. Or whatever.
I mean, you could just Prop 13 your way away from property taxes, so people would just stay in their house forever and then never have to deal with it.
Well, another big one is the if you own it can't be treated as a speculative investment. If you own a property and no one's using it, like, you know, you're waiting to sell it off, or, you know, that can't be allowed. Tax it so heavily that they have to put it out. Lower the prices. There's no ideal here, right? Like, the ideal is everyone just acts in their best interest and all the young people go out and do the city council voting. But like, this is an unworkable problem. Like, no one can afford anything right now.
Right now, you've got private equity with cash making a bid on, say, a $500,000 house. They have the cash. They don't have to take any, they don't have to pay the 7% mortgage. And then you have it against a person who managed to scrape together a down payment and then has to pay a 7% interest rate. Like, that's an unfair fight. The homeowner's going to take the cash offer every single time. And
private equity is buying up a ton of apartments in New York City. My apartment complex got bought by a private equity firm during COVID.
They're going to own like half of the house,
and they treat us
within
like
10 years.
garbage. They don't repair anything, and we can't get through them. I mean, that's a whole other saga. But
they probably want you to leave so they can
renovate
and then upsell.
It's rent controlled. So they want me to leave. Anyway, but Ryan, I actually was reminded when you're talking about a piece you wrote a few years ago that still sticks in the back of my mind about potential commercial housing bubble. That is also something that we should monitor, because private equity was also, and venture capital, I believe, buying up a ton of those commercial real estate properties, and they were pretty overinflated, if my recollection serves me.
That was before the pandemic.
Yeah, do you have any updates on that?
People who watch that are just deeply frightened. They're like, this is the CMBS, the commercial mortgage-backed security market. It has like so many of these traders scared. Is it going to be another like mortgage-backed security meltdown like we had in 2007? What they're trying to do now is turn them into residential properties, and all different Fed action is trying to like keep the bubble from bursting. But in New York, you're seeing a lot of that, right? They're turning them into half residential buildings or something.
Yeah.
The issue's been exacerbated heavily by everyone working at home too. So you go downtown and you see like rows and rows of dead, empty corporate office buildings, and like for lease available in every commercial and office district. And then you go check Zillow and like a house that was.
It's interesting because my wife complains about this a lot. Is they've been putting up newer buildings near us. It's usually factory-esque type of buildings and whatnot. And my wife's like, why the fuck are we continuing to build more shit? There's already so many abandoned buildings, or not abandoned in the traditional sense where, I don't know, they're destroyed. But there's so many, there's always places like looking, there's so many areas that are empty. Why are they building new buildings? And I think that's an interesting conversation. I mean, there's no reason to do it, but people are still doing it. They're just building new shit. Instead of either knocking down an existing building and building a new one, or just going and repurposing that building and doing it there, they are building new buildings. And it is so fucking weird. It is weird. I wonder why. I mean, I said it's probably a location thing, and I get it. But at the same time, it's like, damn, it's just kind of... It's almost it's like building pollution almost at that point,
150,000 10 years ago is now.
Those are the
they-
interest groups that are also pushing people to return to work, get back into the office, These real estate groups that
Or
don't.
rent.
That, yeah, right.
A lot
I
of these
think-
are 5
Who
and
the
10 year
fuck is
leases,
here,
so it holds off the
pussies?
calamity a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, this is an
Oh,
issue.
good. Holds off the calamity.
Yeah, I understand people want to rail against like private equity or large firms buying up houses and everything. I feel like this is a small issue. I know that people like to fixate on it, but the only reason why private equity goes after this property is because it's so goddamn lucrative. Because there are so few housing units available. People want to fight when it comes to the housing issue. It's like one of those things that appears simple, and then when you read more, it's really complicated. But then I think when you read more, it's actually really simple. Like the only way that housing ever gets fixed in the United States or in any part of the Western world is to build more units. Rent control.
Or to decommodify it.
No, decommodification doesn't create more space, though. You have to have more places for people to live. Like rent control has been thoroughly cited as a horrible way of trying to continue.
Oh, okay. I think I understand what he's saying. It took me a second. Yeah, what he's saying is something. I guess I was kind of saying. What he's saying is that having more availability of housing is better than engaging in rent control. But I feel like I understand having to do rent control because I think it's probably overall not like necessarily a bad idea to try to figure it out. But the idea is like, well, if we just had more places to live, there would be kind of more, competition basically, and maybe they wouldn't be able to fuck with people as much. But then the issue is that, sure, I guess.
Housing stuff, like building like luxury condos is good for everybody because people move up into other condos and make stuff available for people. You can get rid of private equity, but there's still going to be people that buy houses. You can try to get rid of like all landlords, but there's still going to be a lot of people chasing these few units. I think it's at the end of the day, it's more a physics problem than any type of economic problem. You just have a lot of people that want to live in an area with not enough houses available, and as long as we keep trying to like nibble at the edges by going after like vacant units, of which there are very few of in the actually like highly populated areas, or going after like private equity who are only making money because there's so few units available, or like by trying to decommodify
But I
housing.
think it's both too because of the political economy. Because think about it, if that little lady had that much power to save the stoplight, if private equity rolls everything up and is benefiting from low housing supply, private equity also owns most of Washington. So
Yeah,
they're
but
going to be able to
homeowners-
stop the solution that you want.
Homeowners benefit from low housing supply too, though. That's the
But,
issue.
there aren't
right?
gonna, but the people owning homes will be a minority pretty soon. So there'll be fewer people benefiting. It'll just be private
Possibly.
equity.
Yeah, I guess it depends on.
I mean, that's the direct
I feel like more and more people are owning or renting out homes too. So you have, sure.
section of the chart.
Sure.
There's no way out of this besides upzoning. That's like an inevitable. I mean, behind us right now. I grew up in LA. Most of it's single-family homes. Every separate home is separated by a 5-mile plane of road and grass that dies in the summer and the fall and the spring now. As a lot of it's also city planning. We build our city so you have wide swaths of residential, and then everyone wants to shop right here, which means a lot of people got to drive there. You don't have these issues to the same extent in like Paris. Relative to population density, you want to go somewhere in Paris, you're above a coffee shop. There's something. That's not a suburban flavor. I think so many of these issues, it seems so difficult to solve because once you start talking about redesigning cities, this is no longer a federal issue. You can offer money, but at the end of the day, I mean, a big mobilization campaign to get 5 million young people to go to their local city council meetings? There's an upper limit in terms of like immediate action.
How the fuck do you even redesign a city? I feel like that's so much. It's like The Sims. You just have to do it in a day. How the fuck would that happen? I don't know.
But we need that.
But I get it.
Yeah.
Although we are redesigning cities at least because we're being forced to since the commercial buildings are.
Yeah. Seattle.
Just have to have a good civil war that destroys entire cities, and then we can rebuild. Boom! I figured it out, guys.
Seattle's been building a ton of apartments lately. They're all over the place, the constructs, and it's great. I love seeing that,
Like every time I've been to Seattle, there's like 500 cranes in the air every time I'm
bless.
driving
I
around. I
love
don't know
it.
what they're doing,
Yeah.
but there's always a lot over there, yeah.
Well, it's good. I mean, honestly,
jerking off.
making more commercial real estate spaces, hopefully, in urban centers for people to live in, just would accelerate something that I would like to see happen to make sure that some place like New York City isn't just Disney World for tourists and we go in to see a show or bridge and tunnelers and coming in and I don't want to see a whole.
I get that. When you rent control, the demand for those units by low-income people will begin to outweigh the supply of owners willing to build in the zone, and then no new low-income housing gets built. Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. I understand that. I guess you'd have to figure out how to get over that. You'd have to figure out how to do that. I mean, I guess the government running the rent control housing could potentially be a solution to that problem. But I do understand that,
homeless person, that might make me uncomfortable, and they actually become livable spaces where people can afford to be. I think that's one of the biggest problems with housing, and it's just creating, as Ryan has been delineating, an entire generation of renters.
It's a big sell for decommodification too. We know housing first policies work for homeless people, like on average getting them off the street, and it's economically beneficial in the long run. And we also don't want to set things up so that you have like a dense urban core where all the cool stuff is, and you build new housing, but it's like an hour out. So you create like this sort of like scaled out issue where all the poor people have 4-hour commutes to get into their janitorial jobs. It's really difficult. Why did we decide to talk about the difficult problem?
I don't know.
There's no like easy.
You just got to invent teleporting, brother. You know, teleport people from point A to point B. I wonder how it would work, because I remember seeing some kind of media that talked about how, maybe it was Futurama, I don't even know, where you would get completely deconstructed and then get reconstructed, like atom by atom, but it would be a perfect reconstruction. And at that point, are you actually just a clone of your former self, and how much of you is actually you? But if they cloned your exact makeup, I imagine the memories are stored in your brain in some capacity, in some way where you would store your brain. So, but then you're just a copy of yourself. So are you actually your authentic self? And then what's stopping them from making multiple copies of you? You could just basically clone people at that point. And then it's like, how do memories even get stored? You know, are we all just a collection of just different data? Like, could you take the same code from your brain and put it into somebody else's brain, and then they would have your memories? You know, I don't understand. This is so sad and complicated, bro. I don't even get it. How does the world work? I don't know. I wish I could teleport. That'd be pretty cool. Then we put airlines out of business, and I'd be fine with that. Fucking airline, you know?
Conclusion. Hey,
There's some easy problems.
How about
Let's do
shutting
those.
down the government? Let's not. What about that? That's good, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to frickin' even keep track. McCarthy's not bringing that continuing resolution
No,
to the floor,
they're
right?
going to do it.
They are?
No, I mean, they're going to shut it down.
Oh, no, they're going to shut it
I'm
down.
gonna be stuck in the airport for like 12 hours trying to get back.
Is Biden actually going to take that damn meeting with McCarthy? I really hope he doesn't.
I don't know. He probably will. He's that kind of a guy.
I know he is that kind of guy. I know, but let the Republicans...
Have I addressed the flood? Bro, what the hell are you talking about? Wait, you kind of said that as if I created the flood. What do you want me to address? Hey, is Papa going to address his role in creating the flood? I don't know. We got to get this guy. I have something to talk about tomorrow on my podcast, I guess, with my wife, but...
are reneging on the deal that they made back with the debt ceiling. It's
I was gonna, historically, who is usually held responsible for a shutdown? Is it always like
Republicans? Yeah.
No, I'm not asking who actually at fault. I'm saying in terms of voter base, they
voters.
voters. Okay, yeah.
Same thing with the impeachment on Biden, and it's going to be the Clinton effect, hopefully.
It's desperation, I think. They're running on fumes right now, right? The polling shows that the trans culture war stuff ain't working too well when it comes to mobilizing voters, because it's marginal, you know?
You can only go through so many years of, which ironically, funny, we talked earlier about like Biden's approval rating. I think one of the things that Biden has kind of done well is we went from probably the most inflammatory president ever to like the most chillest and least polarized. Like, I don't know anybody that like really strongly supports Biden or really strongly hates Biden. He just kind of like does his thing.
I kind of like the guy. He's pretty chill. He's chill like that. He likes ice cream. He did some gay shit. You know, he codified gay marriage. I thought that was pretty cool. He ended a war. You know, it was never going to go well. You know what I mean? I think he's all right. He seems decent. You know.
That's why the Republicans have kind of had to turn to like transitions and other things to fight for so long.
No, yeah, he's difficult to hate, which actually was a pretty good move, I guess. You know, it's one like
Partly it was not being black.
Oh, for sure. Oh, it's so. I mean, he's like old,
and
white,
not being a woman. Yeah.
80-year-old. Yeah. He's a very difficult person to attack on a personal or like civil bias.
Crazy.
I call him anodyne. I feel like that's the best way to describe.
Yeah, and it's why they go after Hunter so much as well. Because like you look at Joe and he's smiling.
He's got a nice dick, bro. He's got a nice dick. He does coke. He's a cool fucking guy. That's why I'd go after Hunter too. I want to date him. Why not?
He's old.
Well, Hunter's hard to hate too. You're like, just
he's a badass. Yeah.
Did it affect me a little bit? My wife was. Well, I'll talk about it tomorrow on the Robin Day podcast. So my wife got caught up in the storm a little bit yesterday. So
for cool people.
All right, we're getting the wrap. We're getting the wrap. Anyway, appreciate it, Ryan Grimm, Vaush, and I'm so sorry to
pretty
names.
funny.
Okay, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Well, I like to shake hands. It's been
Yes.
such a pleasure to speak with you.
Yes.
likewise.
Oh, here,
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Relax,
Yes.
relax.
Thank you. Oh.
You can do it.
We did
Yeah,
it.
and then us. And we finished.
there
Nice.
we
We,
go.
did it.
Yeah.
Solving at least one DC problem.
Yes. There
right
we
here.
go. Perfect.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was a nice little conversation. That was fun.